It's 11:03. You want to go ahead and kick us off, Joyce?
Okay, great. Well, everyone, thanks so much for joining us today for the Great Resignation webinar. We've got some great material here, not only for attracting great talent, but also retaining talent as well. So Robert and I are really excited to give you guys some additional information. So we'll just start off with a few housekeeping items. So first of all, this presentation is going to be recorded. And after the session, we will be emailing it out to all of the attendees, and we will also include your SHRM activity ID in that. We will be having a short activity during the webinar, so having a pen and paper handy will be very beneficial for that. And please don't hesitate to use the Q&A functionality. As we're going through our presentation, if you have any questions about what we're presenting or something that relates, please go ahead and use that functionality, and when we wrap up the webinar, we will have time for questions. So, very excited to start us off with some introductions here. If I am not familiar to you, my name is Joyce Godbey, and I am the Vice President of Talent Acquisition here at Encompass. So my specialty is helping great organizations like yourself find top talent and bringing them to your organization. So whenever you're working on some difficult capacities, or maybe you just need somebody very quickly, I'm the person that you call. Robert?
Sure. And before we go any further, Joyce, can you come a little closer to me? I know we're having the audio issues, so I just want to make sure everybody can hear both of us.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm Robert. I think, hopefully, I know a lot of you on the call. If you don't know me, I'm the VP of Human Capital Consulting here at the Encompass Group. So when Joyce helps in finding new talent, bringing them in the door and helping to make them successful, I would help with maybe engaging your current talent and helping keep people in place, maybe help you with succession plans, that sort of thing. So that's what my role entails here at the Encompass Group. So today we're going to be talking about the Great Resignation or the Big Quit, and we'll kind of tackle it in two different pieces. So I'll talk about your current talent, Joyce will talk about future talent. And when I was putting this together, I kind of started thinking about where we are right now in terms of the Great Resignation. And I couldn't help but think about how far we've come since maybe think about 2008 and 2009. If you remember back then, a movie theater, you couldn't get an interview at a movie theater to sell popcorn if you had a master's degree, right? There was just no one hiring, no matter what. You could not get a job. That has been absolutely flipped on its head. Now, those same movie theaters can't find people to hold the doors open for them. So just interesting how quickly we've flipped from one extreme to the other. So I want to talk about where we are now, but also kind of how we got here. We'll talk about a proactive approach to kind of retaining your current talent. And that's through something here that we subscribe to called the MAGIC methodology of employment engagement or employee engagement. And I'll talk through a little bit about what that means. After I'm kind of done with my portion, I'm going to pass it over to Joyce. She is our kind of resident expert in recruiting and finding talent and getting creative with ideas of getting new people in. So she'll talk a little bit about the current state of the labor market, maybe creative ways to find new candidates and how to attract those candidates, and then onboarding them successfully in a way that their impression of your company is such that it's not somewhere that they want to leave. They're confident that they've made the right decision once they set foot in your door. So kind of laying the groundwork of where we are now, Great Resignation. It gained traction in October of 2020. But if you really think about it, you really look at the numbers, the Great Resignation didn't begin with COVID. It began years before COVID. If you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the quit rates or the resignation rates of employees who are voluntarily leaving their jobs had been steadily increasing for years before COVID. Now, that's not to say COVID wasn't kind of fuel to the fire to kind of exacerbate the issue, but it's not something that had just started once COVID hit. Hospitality workers are leading the charge in terms of people who are leaving their current employment, people in the service industry. And so I started thinking, why would it be the service industry? Well, 86% of American jobs are tied in some way to the service sector. And that is, think bellhops at a hotel, or people checking you out at, Target or Walmart, even up to, people working at the movie theater or in retail. Anyway, all of those are service jobs. 86% of American jobs are in that sector. Of the American growth, 80% of growth is in the service sector. So this is a huge portion of business in the United States. It's no wonder that these jobs are kind of leading the charge in terms of the Great Resignation. And you start thinking about the level of jobs that are leading. It's not as tough. We're trying to find or retain our CFOs or our C-level employees or our VPs or our directors. It's the line level jobs, maybe the more entry level jobs that we're struggling with retention on. And why is that? A lot of these roles really only require general occupational skills, and those skills are really easily transferable. If you can take a call and a call, if you can, open the door at company A, you can do the same thing at company B. So the ease of transfer of those skills make it very, very, very simple to be social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Craigslist. You could go get a job anywhere at the drop of the hat. So all of this together is kind of a recipe for where we are now in terms of the Great Resignation. It's really important to think about this in that way, because I mentioned this didn't start with COVID. In my mind, this may not end with COVID either. This may be kind of the new normal of where we are. Of the Great Resignation or the big quit is kind of a drop in the hat. We need to kind of cross this hurdle and kind of get to the other side. This may be something that we need to get creative on how we deal with long term. And that's more than just finding new talent. That's thinking about how we're engaging our current talent and making it more difficult for them to kind of up and leave. So with that all said, as kind of a backdrop, we'll think about COVID and how this exacerbated things, right? COVID, everything shut down. I remember driving down the street and looking on one of the service roads near my house, and just nobody in a parking lot anywhere. Everybody was working from home, whether it was a retail job, whether it was really anything. You were working from home if you were working at all. So people were recapturing their commuting time, getting to spend more time with their families, saving money, no gas, no having to go out to eat. But it was also an opportunity for a lot of people, especially in line level jobs or service level jobs, to learn new skills, maybe brush up on some softwares that they had not been familiarized with. And importantly here, for individual employers, this was an opportunity for folks to distance themselves from aspects of the workplace that they may not have really been fond of. So say there's a leader or a manager who your work paths don't cross very often, but personally you had to have kind of uncomfortable conversations in the break room with this individual from time to all that's gone. You don't have to worry about that anymore. So now we're at a point where people are starting to kind of come back to the office. They're remembering, now I've got to pick this back up again, and this isn't something I necessarily want to engage in. So all of that together is showing people wanting to maybe explore other opportunities. And we're at almost half the workforce. I think the number is 48%. You saw on a previous slide, according to a Gallup poll, of people who are either actively looking today or they're considering looking. So just take a look around your office and imagine half of these people are thinking about not being here tomorrow. And that's a sobering thought. So what we need to start thinking about, how do we get in front of that rather than being reactive after they leave? So a lot of organizations now are focusing their resources on kind of the Joyces of the world over here, on backfilling the talent. When people leave, what are we going to do? How are we going to fill these roles? We need more applicants, but not as much time and effort is being spent on the retention of current talent. And that's for a few different reasons. One of them being that supervisors and managers, typically when folks get promoted into leadership roles, especially maybe first-time managers, first-time leaders, they're promoted because they're great individual contributors. They're great at their current job. They're great at delivering something. They may not necessarily be great at leading people. And many organizations don't have great training programs in place to help build those soft skills for these first-time managers. So listening, though it may seem kind of common sense and second nature to a lot of people on this call, it's something that it's so important to train on the ability to listen, how to listen, what to listen for, what active listening means. The need to listen to your employees is paramount, because when you start listening, you understand what needs to be changed. So we recommend, if you have the bandwidth to do it, maybe weekly one-on-ones with everybody on your team. What's going wrong? What's going right? What changes would you like to see? At smaller shops, this may be something relatively easy to implement. But for the larger organizations on the call, it might be, how do we actually put the rubber to the road on this? This is difficult. There's so many resources involved in just getting this trained up. Is there an easier way to do this, or maybe a little bit of a quicker fix? And there is, but we'll talk about that here in a moment. But rethinking your business strategy with an employee-centric mind, not just thinking, hey, we do things this way. They've been done this way. We can't increase flexibility here. We work at a call center. We need people in their desks to take these calls. Well, why? I mean, you didn't have to at COVID and you survived. Maybe your productivity dropped a little bit, but is there a way around that? Can we get creative in how to fill that gap a little bit? What do the employees really want? Is really important to start thinking about, just kind of putting yourself in their shoes. A focus on workplace safety right now is also really important, as we see a lot of our clients maybe migrating back into the workplace. You got to think, a lot of these employees have been working from home for about 18 months. They're a little bit nervous. They want to know what kind of safety protocols are in place. Is masking a priority? Are we or are we not currently requiring vaccinations? Which is another hot topic right now that I'm sure you've seen other webinars around. We'll get to that. But all of these things, do we have increased airflow in the building? Just because you have them done, if you haven't done a great job in communicating them to the employee base, they don't really matter, right? You might have yourself covered from an OSHA compliance standpoint, but if your employees don't know what you've done, it doesn't help them in their confidence level in going to work. And then finally, what's really important for people in terms of trajectory with a company is having a growth plan in place for every single person on your team. And that might not be a promotional trajectory for them. It might not be, hey, how do we get into a raise or the next role? But how can I help you with building some skills? Are there things that I can help you do to increase your knowledge base professionally, or even help to develop you personally? Just having some kind of plan in place for everyone on your team, it does a great job of increasing kind of the level of employee engagement that you got at your organization. So I want to talk a little bit about these buckets, big of an undertaking to train all of my managers on one-on-ones and how to listen and how to get this information and re-engage their teams. How can I do this at a larger organization a little bit more formally? There's a way to do it that we subscribe to, and it's called the MAGIC methodology, where you really bucket feedback into 5 different groups. And those buckets that we measure feedback in are M for meaning, right? A, autonomy. Does your job offer autonomy? G is growth. Is there a growth trajectory? Do you see where you're going with this company? I is impact. Does the work does it matter, right? Does the work that you do matter to the organization? Is it making a difference anywhere? And finally, C is connection. Do you get along with your manager? Do you get along with your team? Is there a sense of camaraderie there? Each one of these buckets individually is so important. And if one of them starts to fall short, that's really all it takes to really disengage an employee. So I think of this in terms of maybe employee engagement surveys, right? It's quarterly, maybe it's monthly. But when you do these surveys, we don't want to just ask, are you happy here? What would you change if you want to ask, or if you could change something? We want to bucket them into these categories so we can look for trends and identify, maybe it's by department, maybe it's by manager or team, where the gap is, so we know how to address that particular gap. So in terms of what this looks like, right? Say we're creating some engagement surveys or putting some questions together. We want to measure meaning. We can ask things like, are you motivated to come to work every day? Do you feel a sense of accomplishment when you complete a project here? Does work provide meaning to you? And if we're doing a 1 through 5, we see a bunch of 1s or 2s here, we know this is an area that we need to really focus our engagement efforts on. Sorry, I want to head a little bit there, hang on. A, autonomy. Right? So questions that we could ask for autonomy is, do you have the necessary tools to do your job? Are you free to make your own decisions on how to best complete your work? Basically, are you able to take a calculated risk if it's for the benefit of the business, or are you afraid to take risks at work, right? Are you able to do your work without kind of having somebody almost do it for you? Really important area to measure. G is growth. Things you could ask for growth. Do you see yourself with us 3 years from now? Do you see yourself with us 5 years from now? Why or why not? Do you have a clear vision of where you want to go with this company? Is a good question. Question that you could ask for impact. Does your work make a difference here? Do you see yourself as part of this team or an important part of this team? Both make a difference. And finally, connection is just, do you have fun here? Positive relationships with your teammates, positive relationships with your coworkers. Again, we need to look at every one of these buckets individually, and it makes it pretty simple to identify where our gap areas are so we know where to start correcting them. So with that all said, great resignation or the big quit, we can turn this into the great opportunity, because people are leaving their jobs, but they're all going somewhere, right? So if you know your story, you know how to speak to it, and not just you as leaders, but your employees know your story and they know how to speak to it, and they're engaged and they're kind of your net promoters. All employees are going to see turnover, but the best employers are going to be not have an issue with backfilling it, because their reputation is going to be so fantastic. So as we said, everybody is going to see turnover. So when you do, that's when you call Joyce, and she can help you out. So I'm going to pass it over to her to talk about the talent acquisition side of things.
Thanks so much, Robert. So if you hear my voice and you can't see me on video, just a quick housekeeping item. You can click view in your right-hand corner and then select side-by-side gallery, and you should be able to see my face if you would prefer to be able to see me while I talk. So Robert did a great job of talking about retention and keeping employees, but inevitably we're always going to lose some, right? Or we're already in the situation where we need to hire. So the first thing we need to look at to be successful is the situation that we're in. And frankly, we are in a labor shortage right now. I've got some statistics up on the slide that, like I think Robert said as well, can be a little bit sobering. But to understand how to get talent, you have to understand where you're sitting right now, right? You need to know the pond you're fishing in. You're not going to take a fly rod bass fishing. So what is going on with candidates right now? Now, right before the pandemic, I think everybody would tell you that we were in a hot job market, right? People were hiring, unemployment was at record level lows. And what a lot of people haven't realized is we're right back at that again. Indeed hit 11 million job postings in October, which was record breaking. There has never been so many postings. Resignations, like Robert talked about, are up. And what a lot of people haven't realized is there's been a surge of retirement. People decided to retire a little bit early. Individuals were in a situation where they were willing to take a step back in long-term compensation to spend more time with their families. And so people aren't in the job market. So the individuals that are in the job market, what is it that they're looking for? And Forbes has done a great job, I think, of doing a lot of surveying. And it looks like candidates really across the board are looking for things like flexibility, higher wages, a shortened commute, having flexible hours. And so we need to understand we're not going to be able to hit every single one of these things that candidates are looking for, right? If you're a manufacturing facility and you make things, you're probably not going to be able to allow people to work from home every day. But since we can't give that flexibility, what are the other things that our organization really offers that we can focus on to get people in the door? So I want to talk about how we can find these candidates, right, to get them to join the organization. And there's 4 ways I want to encourage you to really go about that. So first is industry-specific events. I think that everybody can agree that when you're looking to hire someone, it's always easier to hire someone from your industry, right? And it makes sense because they have the same contacts. They probably understand your sales cycles. They have a good idea of some industry-specific technology. So if you want to hire someone from a competitor, think, when's the last time I saw my competitor? Are there any groups? Are there any trade shows? What events do we all attend when we start networking with one another? And the great thing is that now that we're going into 2022, these things are coming back. And a great example, I'm not sure what industry you're in. I know we have a variety here on this webinar, but for architects, there's a group called the AIA, which is, all architects can join this organization, and they have a lot of specific events. In the summer, they have a sandcastle competition where, everybody tries to create their own, gorgeous architectural sandcastle. And in the winter, they create, different buildings essentially out of dog food. It's actually something they do for charity. But these kind of events, you're going to be seeing people at the same level as you, entry level, even principals. And when you go to these events, you can start having some conversations. Next time you go to a trade show, go out of your comfort zone, say hi and start connecting with other individuals, start collecting those business cards, because when you're done with the trade show and you've spoken with other individuals in your industry, do some follow-up. You can send a follow-up email that says, hey, it was great meeting with you, would love to set up a coffee, or maybe would love to just set up a call to discuss potential business opportunities. And when you say it like that, they don't feel like they're being recruited. They feel like they're having an ally in their industry. And that's a great way to start connections to potentially get employees to come to your company. Now, the second way is something that you can implement immediately, which is an employee referral program. If you hire someone that's great, I bet you that they also know someone that's great. That could be someone that they worked with at their previous company, which if you like their background, you'll probably like their previous coworker's background. I mean, it could be someone they went to school with, right? If you're looking for an engineer, they graduated with a bunch of other engineers they might still be in contact with. But for most people, it's not top of mind for me to go reach out to people I know to bring to my company. I'm worrying about my day-to-day at work. I'm worrying about my family life. And so if you can put an employee referral program that really incentivizes your employees to go through their connections, it's a great way and a very cost-effective way to bring people to the team. Now, at Encompass, we've implemented, I'll tell you, a very general referral bonus. And this isn't something that you need to give a huge lump sum all at once. A lot of companies spread it out, but they'll give you 25% after 30 days of your friend getting hired, and the next 25% after 90 days. That way you ensure that you're only paying on great talent. So if you already have this in place and you're not getting a lot of employee referrals, I want to encourage you to do two things. Number one, you need to market this to your employees. Just because you have it in place doesn't mean people know about it. Get them excited, bring it up in those one-on-ones that Robert talked about. Or maybe if you're having a company-wide event, it can be kind of an introductory thing that you bring up. And if it is being marketed, then the next thing you need to look at is this substantial enough? Is this, referral bonus really enough money to incentivize someone to reach out to people that they know? But it's a great way to bring people to the organization. Again, it's very cost effective. So the third way is through LinkedIn. And I think there's a misconception that people feel like they can only use LinkedIn to recruit if they pay for LinkedIn. Now, don't get me wrong, LinkedIn Recruiter is an amazing tool that I get to use every day and I love it. But your free version of LinkedIn can, be very beneficial as well. So, for example, let's say that you're looking to hire a marketing professional. And again, we talked about, people that you're meeting at trade shows, people in your industry. You can go on LinkedIn, you can type in a name of a company that you want to kind of, look for. And there's a button where you can look through all their current employees. So once you find someone you want to reach out to, you can click their profile and you can send what they call a connection. And what you might not know is you can send 100 connections absolutely free every single week. And I'm assuming that you're probably not going to be reaching out to more than 100 candidates a week on top of your day job, right? So when you send these connections, just make it personal. Hey, nice to meet you. I love connecting with other software development professionals, and I would love to connect on future business opportunities. Again, keeping something a little bit kind of vague and focused on your industry. People aren't going to feel like they're recruited, and everybody wants to make connections in their space that can help them long term. So if you start out with a message like that, most likely they're going to accept your connection, and then you can follow up and say, hey, would love to meet for coffee, or would love to schedule a phone call just to hear kind of your thoughts on the trends in the industry. And that's really how you start those conversations in a very natural way. Now, the fourth thing that you can utilize is existing software. I would bet you $1 right now. So I'm not sure how many people are on the webinar. That might add up. So you can tell how confident I am. But I will bet you that your company already pays for some kind of scraping tool. If you have a business development team, an inside sales team, they have some kind of software where they can pull people's phone numbers, they can pull their email addresses. At Encompass, we use something called Zoom Info. There's a lot of softwares. There's Ringlead, there's Capture. So if your company is paying for it, maybe you can poke around and ask some questions. You can use it internally as well, right? Let's say that Kathy is in business development. Maybe touch base with Kathy and ask if you can spend a few minutes with her on that tool and scrape some phone numbers for those individuals that you targeted on LinkedIn, or maybe those individuals you ran across on the trade show. And again, you can give them a call, leave them a voicemail, say it was great meeting with you, I would love to talk more, or even send them a text message. So if your company's already paying for tools like this, you might not be thinking about utilizing it internally, but it's something that can be really beneficial. So now that we know how to go after candidates, we want to talk about attracting them, right? How are we going to get them excited to come work for our company? So what you need to realize is you need to have as many hooks in the water as possible. There are too many companies that just sell out to one platform. Maybe you're only advertising on LinkedIn, or maybe you're only on ZipRecruiter. There's a lot of avenues out there. ZipRecruiter, Career Builder, Indeed, LinkedIn. There's a lot of industry-specific job boards. There's even industry-specific Facebook pages where people share jobs. Take some time to go on Google and do some research and really figure out what your options are. Another great kind of capacity you can look at for entry-level roles, if you're open to somebody that doesn't have a ton of experience, go to college career fairs, reach out to department heads. Colleges and specifically professors love connecting, their students, and especially their graduating students, with companies. It can be something, if you're looking for an architect, reaching out to the architecture department. Maybe you're looking for a communications professional, reaching out to the communications department. That's a great way to find entry-level talent. And of course, the other option is hiring a recruiter. You're not going to be able to work on every single position. The odds that you have the capacity to fill every role, especially those more difficult roles, don't be afraid to reach out and get help. A contingent recruiter is always your best bet, because if you find someone on your own, you're not necessarily going to be out the money for paying one. But again, it gives you multiple hooks in the water to find those additional candidates. Now, the most important thing, though, is that you need to sell your story. So this is going to go to the exercise that I talked about earlier. So I want everybody to pull out a piece of paper, a pen, and I want you just to take 2 minutes to think about what you love about your job and your company, right? Why do you come to work every day? It could be something big, like we've got, great healthcare benefits, or it could be something, really small that, you love that you work with a bunch of jokesters. Or for Halloween, everybody gets super into it and the competition is amazing, right? So just spend a couple minutes. I'm going to pause here, and I want you to think about what you love about your job and your company and why you still work there. Okay, so now that you've had a few minutes, look at that paper. And what are the things that you see there, right? Do you go to Christmas dinner at your owner's house? Maybe you had an ill family member and your company really embodies family orientation and they allowed you to work remote, for a week while you dealt with that. These specifics, these tangibles, that is what is going to get people excited to work for your company. It's so easy to get in a rut and have kind of just an automated response on what's great about our company, or we're just like every other manufacturing company. No, there's things about you that are unique, and those are the specific details that you need to be including when it comes to job postings, or when you're talking to candidates about why they want to work there. You really want to start integrating those details. So that kind of leads me to an engaging interview process, which I think is really important. Again, you need people to feel excited and seen. You know, when Robert talked about the magic methodology, I think that really starts in your first conversation with a candidate. Now, right now, because the labor market is so competitive, I think it's really easy when you talk to a great candidate to get excited and then just immediately send them an offer letter. But believe it or not, being quick doesn't necessarily mean being most successful. I want to encourage you to incorporate a multi-step interview process. And the reason I want to do that is because the more you meet with a candidate, the more that you have the ability to connect with them on a personal level. The more time that they take out of their day that they commit to you, it adds additional steps of investment and really leads to a much more successful offer letter conversion, believe it or not. So you need to meet with them multiple times. I'm also a huge believer of really kind of taking a step out of the box, doing something like taking them out to lunch as their final interview, or breakfast. Or, you know, I even had a client, believe it or not, that took their entire family to dinner so they could get to know each other on a more personal level. Now, you don't necessarily have to go that far, but really taking time rather than just asking them questions, you know, what's your greatest strength and weakness, or, you know, what are you looking for salary, but really digging in and saying, you know, what's most important to you in your day-to-day, or what motivates you to work hard, and then really being able to figure out what their drivers are, and then demonstrating and giving tangible examples about how your company fulfills that. That's how you get somebody excited, right, to join your organization. And I think that really flows over to the offer letter process as well, right? Kind of go the extra mile, get people excited. Some options of going the extra mile for an offer letter is, number one, not just sending it to them via email, but picking up the phone and calling them and walking them through the offer letter and showing them how excited you are. Maybe offering some kind of signing bonus. If you have a budget between 50 and 60 and you know that they would probably take 50, maybe give them 51 or 52 to show them that you value them, that you're excited about them. Or one of my favorites, which doesn't cost any extra money, is actually in the offer letter, putting in there that you're going to do a 6-month review where you're going to discuss salary, or at a year, you're going to have the ability to have a merit increase. It's not promising anything, but it gives people the thought that you want to help them long term, and that just because they start a company at X amount of dollars doesn't mean they're going to stay there. So that's a really small, easy step that you can implement in all your offer letters. It's really going the extra mile with candidates that other companies aren't doing. So when we talk about attracting candidates, the internet is where everything is right now, right? Job postings is big and it's important. And so I have an example on here, and it says the wrong way. Now, out of context, this looks fine, right? There's nothing wrong with it. There's a position summary. It tells you what you're going to be doing. It goes into responsibilities. It explains the day-to-day of the job. But the problem with this is there's no personality, right? I can't tell you when I go on just to look to see what my competition is doing. The internet is flooded with these. And the problem is they're typically 2 pages long, and they talk about all the responsibilities that this person needs to have and every single person they're going to talk to the day-to-day. But you know what this doesn't talk about? It doesn't talk about culture. It doesn't talk about flexibility. It doesn't talk about growth or mentorship. And that's really what you need to put in these job postings. You should always be starting your job posting with something that's great about your company. So this is an example of something that my team put together for a client that we're working for. And it talks about the unique approach they take with clients. It talks about how this isn't a typical sit behind your desk kind of opportunity, right? It's fast paced. They're not just looking for an employee. They're looking for a partner that's going to engage in all their exciting cultural events. So when you think back to the exercise we did about what do I love about my job and what do I love about my company, you should really be starting your job postings with some of those exciting things and then go into the details of the job. And I also want to encourage you, when you are going into those details, you should be able to kind of summarize those into just a couple of bullet points. You don't want a job description that's 2 pages long, because candidates are just going to scroll right past that. You want something that kind of jumps off the page and has a little bit more oomph to it, if that makes sense. So now that we have figured out how to find candidates, right, how we're going to have those conversations, how we're going to be attractive, and then hopefully get a signed offer letter, you know, it doesn't stop there. We've got to talk about onboarding, because you might think that you're done being a company salesperson when you get that signed offer letter. but that's not the case. We joke here at Encompass, we say it's not done until the butt's in the seat. And especially if someone is working out, a 3 to 4 week notice, which I feel like is kind of becoming more and more common rather than the typical 2 weeks, you've got to realize, man, they're still in enemy territory. They're coming into work every day, especially if they're a great candidate. Their boss is saying, "You sure you didn't change your mind? Hey, we're kicking off a new project this week. You could be a perfect project lead for that." So you should be checking in with your candidates, right? Every week, maybe every other week, just shooting them an email. Again, picking up the phone goes such a long way, and saying, "Hey, we just ordered your computer today. We're so excited," or "We just ordered you a company sweatshirt. Are you a size small or size medium?" That really goes a long way. Now, if this is a candidate that you're really excited about and you just cannot stand to lose them, set a meeting for lunch or breakfast before their start date. If a candidate has that on their calendar, it's a huge commitment. It's a lot harder for a candidate to tell you, "Hey, I actually decided I'm going to stay with my company. I accepted a counteroffer," when they already have a meeting on the books with you on a personal note. I think breaking bread really goes a long way. So I'm going to encourage that, and then I'm going to tell you to continue that on their first day, right? You should have a first day outline. Again, going back to what Robert said about kind of that magic, it needs to start from the very beginning. I'm telling you, a candidate can feel when you're just winging it, right? When you're so busy, you're not prepared, you're just, "Oh, talk to so-and-so that they'll show you what to do." It should be kind of planned out. Tell your employees to go over and say hi, right? Every person at the company should be, or at least in their department, should be reaching out and saying, "Hey, how's your first day? Let me know if you have any questions." At Encompass, we have a first day lunch. Again, you get to break bread with somebody, you make it a little bit more personal. Even going as far as doing a little welcome gift basket. Maybe you can get some company swag, whether that be a mug or a t-shirt, or even something as simple as just getting them, a nice binder and pens and stuff like that from Staples. Again, it just kind of shows that you care. And the last thing I want to encourage you to do is really sit down and ask them about their expectations for the job, and then tell them your expectations. Outline, this is what you should accomplish by 30 days, by 60 days, by 90 days. By really laying this out, number one, you give someone something to strive for, but when you're clear in your expectations, you're going to have somebody work that much harder to make sure that they're fulfilling those. And I would really encourage, asking people, "How do you learn best? This is my management style. How do you think this is going to work for you?" That way, if there's going to be any hiccups that come down the road, you can already address that and really just begin a beautiful employee experience from day one. So that being said, those are the things that I would really encourage you that you can implement today and really kind of rethinking your strategy. And I think Robert's going to jump in here, kind of close us out and just talk about, what we covered today. And I think we're going to go into some questions as well.
Yeah, for sure. So really, I mean, if you kind of, the top thing is understand the new reality, right? This might not be a drop in the hat. The fact that people are leaving their jobs more frequently, kind of being a little bit more mobile in their careers, we've got to think about ways that we can overcome that and be an employer of choice. Really knowing your strengths and selling your strengths as an employer to get new candidates, and the importance of a successful onboarding being implemented. Really, you can't make a first impression twice. So the importance of that can't be overstated. So I hope you enjoyed our presentation today around kind of engagement and also recruiting and finding talent. We are going to take questions. If you've got any, feel free to throw them in the chat box. We do have one question around recording. We are going to have this recording. We did record it. It's going to be available. We'll send it out and we'll post it up to our website at theencompassgroup.com. Our contact information is there as well on Encompass Group. So if you'd like to get a hold of us, feel free to reach out. And I know we are going to be sending out the SHRM activity ID to anyone who's registered, so we can be sure that you get your credit of continuing education that goes towards your SHRM certification. So I am not seeing any additional questions.
Oh, I see a question that came in here asking if we're seeing a trend for increase in a remote workforce. And I would say the answer to that, at least from my perspective, is definitely yes. I think it's something that people are needing to reevaluate. And what I'm actually seeing probably more than a complete remote workforce is companies really embracing a hybrid model. I think that especially leadership, they love the idea of collaboration, of being in the office, and a happy medium that I think is kind of working and allowing you to give that flexibility while not necessarily giving up that in-office presence is creating an environment where maybe everybody can work from home Mondays or Fridays, but there are core days that you have to be in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So if that's something that you guys consider, I think that's been really successful as a middle ground with candidates. But I would say, at least from my perspective, being in the market every day, that I am seeing an increase in that trend. What would you say, Rob?
I would add that not only is it an increase kind of long term, but we've got some people who haven't even gone back into the office yet. We've got some larger employers who are still 100% remote from COVID. So I think from a recruiting standpoint, if folks are looking for a new job, a lot of times that's one of their non-negotiables. You know, I've been working at home for a year. I'm not taking another job unless I can continue to work from home. And some of these people are your super high level contributors, people that you absolutely want on your team. So if you don't allow work from home at all, you know, you kind of are under that mindset, it might be time to kind of rethink that if you want to stay competitive in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm. Looks like we've got another question as well. So because of inflation, how are you seeing companies handling compensation, Rob?
So that is a loaded question. We're having a lot of issues kind of that we're discussing with clients around, you know, pay compression and even pay inversion and how to handle that. I think in a lot of, I guess in short, one of the first things that it's important to do is make sure that you have a compensation strategy that you're continuously reevaluating. And not only are you continuously reevaluating that, but you're making sure that your pay bands are still accurate for the jobs. You know, historically, we used to do pay bands for groups of jobs, right? Like a lot of similarly valued jobs would fall into the same pay band. But a lot of times now we're doing maybe moving to individual jobs have their own pay band just because the jobs are so different and they're increasing at such different rates. So there are a lot of different ways that we're kind of trying to tackle this problem with inflating rates due to inflation, but we'll certainly be happy to work with any clients if this is an area of concern with them.
Mm-hmm. And just to add some additional color to that, if you're not aware, I read a report, I think it was a couple of days ago, that in the past year, inflation has increased by 6%. And especially if you're looking for more of your line level staff, that's going to be a significant hit to their kind of take home income. So that's definitely something that you should be evaluating. I know that we have, you know, partners when it comes to looking at staying competitive and looking at different pay bands. And so if you're worried about being competitive, I know that you can absolutely reach out to Rob. And we've got a lot of partners at our disposal that really help us figure out what pay is right now and what companies of your industry and your size are paying employees so you can stay competitive.
Excellent. Well, it looks like that was the last of our questions.